Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Coaches Corner University podcast. Today I am joined by Tony Christodoulou. Tony and I recorded a podcast a few weeks ago and unfortunately fell victim to some technical difficulties. So we're going to do it all again and run it back for you guys. Tony, welcome to the podcast, man.
Paul, thanks for having me on again. It's unfortunate they got done, but we're going to do it better this time. I'm excited. Let's go for it.
Yeah, second time, run it back. So why don't you give people a little bit of a background on you? I mean, your background as a coach, as an athlete is pretty cool. And then coming into what you do for a living now as a coach, working with high level CEOs and high performers worldwide is fucking cool. So share away, man. The floor is yours.
All right. So, yeah, I guess I'll start from the beginning. I grew up most of my life in Athens, Greece. I was born in the U.S., but I was about 4 years old. I moved to Athens, Greece. I always wanted to be a professional wrestler my whole life. That's how I wanted it to be when I was a kid. I accidentally got a UFC tape one day and was like, no, okay, I'm switching. I'm going to go here. When I was like 17, I moved to the United States. I was probably like 265 pounds. I was obese, wasn't a muscle to be found. And I decided I wanted to become a professional mixed martial artist, and particularly I wanted to fight in the UFC. I started training. I trained for over 15, 16 years in combat sports. I amassed somewhere around 30 to 40 MMA 30 MMA fights, probably like 40 to 50 fights generally if you put in different martial arts. uh, and yeah, I ended up making it to the UFC. I fought at 145 pounds, so about 120-pound difference.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, it was insane. It was a little bit of a weight drop, you might say,
Yeah.
Over the years, as a professional fighter, I struggled quite a bit with yo-yo dieting. Developed quite a bit of stress and a bad relationship with food. But through that process, I kind of became known among people in my peers as kind of like a weight cutting. I'm not going to even say the word coach. I was just kind of the guy to come to for weight cutting. That kind of bled into me starting to train other clients. I just wanted to lose weight. And I started trying to really learn and understand nutrition, sports science a lot more seriously. Unfortunately, it was a little too late for me. The damage had been done as far as my personal career had gone. But I had really learned so much that I decided that, you know what, this is where I'm going to go. It seems like being a coach is kind of where my life path is leading me. I opened a personal training studio in Athens, Greece. I trained also a bunch of professional fighters, professional athletes for like maybe like 4 or 5 years until I accidentally fell into working with a client whose name was Joe Fournier. You might have seen him because he fought KSI, a famous YouTube
Yep.
boxer. He had put on a ton of weight, and somebody was like, "Hey, would you like to come out over the summer and coach Joe for like a prolonged period of time? You're going to live with him and help him get down." We ended up losing 42 pounds. Got him in really good shape, and then he convinced me. He said, "Listen, I don't know what you're doing in Greece, but there's a ceiling to what you could do there due to the economic barriers of it, and I think that you're really well suited for this world of, to put it bluntly, kind of like the richer people of the world, the more high net worth people of the world." He's like, "I think that you could really fit in this very concierge niche training market." And so I trusted him, closed my gym down. For the past 7, almost 8 years now, I've been traveling the world with various clients. I work with them 300 days a year, wherever they go. I'm with them on call 24/7. Now I have other trainers who also work for me to do that. And quite recently, I went online as well.
Dude, that's quite the story. And I mean, when you went through it on the first podcast we recorded, it just struck me as so interesting that like leap of faith that you made just by someone saying, "Hey, you could probably be good at this." what was it for you that made it? I mean, was it an easy decision to close down your gym?
So it wasn't easy for multiple reasons. One, I had a long-term girlfriend at the time that I was living with for 3 years by that point. Uh, so that was hard because I also knew that that would be probably be the end of the relationship, and it was. So that was also very difficult. But I basically, for most of my life, I actually, I think a better way to put this is I learned a lot from my failures as a fighter. And I know a lot of people think that I have success because I made it to the UFC, but in my eyes, I'm a bit hard on myself. I see it as a failure because I didn't make it to where I wanted to be in the UFC. Even though
Right.
the odds were stacked against me from the beginning, I always felt like I'm going to figure this out. And I made errors that, looking back, were very like, oh, if I just thought this through logically, I would have been able to avoid that mistake, that mistake. And don't get me wrong, it probably worked out for the best because I have some traumatic brain injury due to the fighting. So maybe if I had continued and things had gone good and I hadn't gotten tested, things could have ended up really bad for me.
Yep.
But I did see, like, okay, my path forward in life, as far as me trying to be successful, I can't ignore these obvious steps to get better, to improve.
Right.
And I walked through it logically. I said, okay, let's do the math. Like, okay, I'm teaching clients. At the time in Greece, you got to remember the average wage was 700 euros a month. That's what the average person was making.
So like $1,000, 1,000, 1,200 US.
No, even less. It's probably like 900 US dollars a month.
Okay. All right. I thought the exchange rate was bigger. Okay.
There was times where it fluctuated, but yeah, it's closer. The average probably closer to 7 to 900.
Okay.
And so very limited. People were
Hmm.
losing their house. People were losing, people were living on the street. Very hard time. I
Jeez.
managed to find a niche, a percentage of the population that were very wealthy and willing to pay me more than anyone else getting paid, but it was still nothing compared to what I would be making doing the same clientele in the US or in the UK.
Right.
And I was like, okay, how many more of these guys are there that I got out there? Maybe I can get another 10 of these guys. Okay, I'm already working 10 hours a day. Like, I don't know how much more I could do and physically train people. A lot of my clients were martial art training too, so I also had to like wrestle with
Yeah.
them
So you're literally fighting all day.
all day for 10 hours a day. Well, and obviously it's not very tiring because the guys' skill levels aren't close to mine, but still it's got physical activity. Even just grabbing people's weights and putting them on their things all day, at some point you're doing 10 hours a day. And I was traveling to people. So I would get on buses and metros and trains and go to the other side of Athens because the amount of people there they're very wealthy. They're paying what to them is an exorbitant amount compared to what they pay any other trainer. So I'd have to go so above and beyond. I was like,
Yeah. Right.
I am capped. He's not wrong. Like, it just, that's really what it came from. It's like, he's not wrong. I don't have any way to scale this to get to my goals. And I was pretty
Right.
solid on what I wanted to do in my life and where I wanted my life to be. And I was like, okay, if I don't take the leap of faith now, when I'm at the time I was 30, when I'm 30 years old, how am I going to take that leap of faith when I'm 35 or when I'm 40? It's just going to only get harder from here. I'm only
Right.
getting more entrenched in my life. And I'm like, now's the time to do it. So I just, I jumped at it.
So you went from working 10 hours a day to working 24 hours a day. How was that transition?
Yeah, it was, it's funny that a lot of people are like, man, your life's great. Like, how much could you possibly train these guys? It's like they're not working out all day. And, that's 100% the case, 100% the case. But being on call, I could tell you, is more stressful, in my mind at least. I would rather just, all right, let's plow these 10 guys out the way. Like, let's get this working. It's normal. Being on call is one of the more uncomfortable feelings. And dealing with, like, logistical things, which is stuff I never dealt with. Like, some of my clients, like, they might be on testosterone. Now that becomes my problem permanently. The doctors, I got to learn about why people get on testosterone, how much testosterone. Like, it became like a whole education process for me.
Right.
So yeah, that was a big transition, and the level of dealing with clients. Like, when you're in a gym setting and the client comes to you, there's this certain like level of mutual respect that's like, yeah, I'm hiring you for this hour, but that's it. Like, you don't just work for me. I don't just demand things from you. Like I ask you, like, hey, does this sound like a good idea? Does this sound good?
Right.
I go from that to being truly a number two in the sense it's like, I need you here. You might wait for me for 3 hours and then we're going to train when I feel like it. And you're just going to, your time is just a zero in comparison to what my needs
Mm,
are. And that was a bit of a struggle for me in the beginning. But yeah, I just looked at it like, okay, so how can I maximize this opportunity? How can I be a better coach? How can I give these guys more of what they want? And hopefully that will accelerate me in my journey.
So you mentioned, the role that you play as a liaison between doctor and your client. That's one of the things that I think as coaches, we have to do. Like we have to be part of that client's healthcare team, whether you're working in an online setting or whether you're working in person or whether you're working as you are in like a concierge setting. I just see us as advocates for our clients when they're dealing with care providers, because in most cases, we should have a little bit more background information into the health concerns. Not only that, it should be our responsibility to educate ourselves on those health concerns. I'm sure that was a bit of an adjustment period for you, but how have you used that challenge to kind of further your own education?
So one, like I had very, very limited knowledge about any kind of performance enhancing drugs. Even when we were talking about, I remember when one of my clients first got on a GLP-1 and I had no idea what anything about it. It was like a shock because I went through all the phases. Like, oh, people are going to lose all their muscle. Peter Attia came out. I would watch every podcast would come. Peter Attia says, oh, we're seeing that people are losing a big muscle loss. I would try to caution, talk with doctors, and I think what it's really done, it's taught me so much more about the human body and how complex it is and how individualistic it is. Like every person is different, and every person reacts differently, and
Right.
there's really is no one size fits all. Like I've had clients now that have been on Mounjaro that like their appetite goes away a little bit and it's fine. Outside of that, they're just hunky dory. And I got other people that have it and they're throwing up, and then we have to really titrate down the dose. If not, try something completely different because their GI tract can't handle it.
Right. So are you sitting in on all of those like doctor meetings and stuff like that? Because obviously you're not prescribing these things to your clients.
No, I don't even sit in. I'm the only one that even goes now. So they won't even show up at their own doctor's meeting. They just send me there.
That's bananas. Imagine being so ballin' that you're like, yeah, yeah, just go to the doctor for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what it is. It's literally like I have at some point the one of the doctors, one of my clients, he wanted to hire me to do what I do for my clients for all his clients because the concierge is like he's like this is so useful. Like he's like you have more knowledge than most of the people. You have more knowledge than all of the clients, and to be honest, you have a lot more knowledge, and even some of the doctors have in this very niche, particular range of things that these people want to do, especially for the aesthetic looks and stuff like that. It's like I think this would be a great service to give people because people hate coming here.
Oh
They
yeah.
want to come here. Like one of my clients on testosterone. He's a bit of a scaredy cat. He didn't want to. He didn't want to get. He doesn't like getting the needles, and he doesn't like when anyone else is needle except the doctor. The doctor has a really smooth hand. And so he'd come in and want to get the shot, and he didn't care. Like when the doctor was talking to him, you just saw his eyes were just blank, and the doctor just kind of look over at me and just like, all right, let me just explain everything to you. Like this is going on. Like obviously, this guy does not care what I have to say, so just here it is.
That's so funny, man. Um, are you comfortable getting into the conversation of GLP? Like we didn't get into that in our last conversation, but
Yeah,
I think it's worth a discussion for sure.
definitely, definitely.
So more and more clients are getting prescribed these medications, and more of them are being prescribed the medications for off-label use. So
Yeah.
they're not obese, they don't have type 2 diabetes. They're just looking to lose some weight. What's been your experience, especially with the like the progression from like Ozempic to tirzepatide and now the introduction of retatrutide? What's been your experience with clients using these drugs, both positive and negative, and how has that affected your coaching practice?
So I'll give you a quick example. So online, I trained one lady. Um, she she came to me for coaching, but she did tell me, "Listen, I want to take a GLP-1. Like as first thing we started, this is what I want to do." And we did like I did think I did like a month to month with her, and we did month to month. The first month started, she was basically living her life as if she was not taking a GLP, if she wasn't taking a GLP-1. She wasn't making any adjustments lifestyle wise. And I
Okay.
warned her. I said, listen, you're not obese, so you're going to lose weight quite fast, and we're going to start getting into a situation which potentially is going to be losing muscle mass. You might
Mhm.
get, as they say, like Ozempic face or Ozempic butt, and these are things you don't want. Like you don't want this to happen,
Right.
and I'm telling you, it might happen. And she was kind of like yada yada, no big deal, whatever. So whatever, our top first section of this finished. She lost the weight. She was all happy, but she really, thank God, she worked out frequently, which was great. But she
Hmm.
really didn't focus on her protein. She wasn't trying to get her fiber in, like we said. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of fighting. Then she got off and she started putting the weight back on slowly, slowly. And she called me back up and she said, "You know what? The weight's coming back on, and I feel like my butt is flatter, which something a lot of the women really care about. Like my butt's getting flatter, and my people are telling me my face looks sunken. Like that's exactly what you were telling me might happen." And she's like, "What if? Let's do it again. I don't want to. I don't want to go. I don't want to deal with the hunger pains. I've tried that my whole life. I really enjoyed the diet on Mojaro, but let's do it right." So we did the second time, and she increased every single one of PRs on her lifts, her major lifts. So she was getting stronger basically on every single section she was doing, and she was eating her protein easily. She was getting a bunch of fiber in. We got her some supplementation, some electrolytes, even because a lot of times you feel so full that you don't want to drink water.
Hmm.
Got her the electrolytes, and she went from being she looked so vibrant, so healthy, so much younger. She was so happy that she did it the right way. And I think if you do it and you do it that way, it could be great. But if you just try to freestyle it and you're eating half a donut every day, that's where the problem really gets.
So you kind of take it as an opportunity to double down on the lifestyle stuff, right? Like, and I do the same. So whenever I've had clients on it, I take it as an opportunity to be like, hey, you're gonna do this, but we need to make sure that everything else becomes non-negotiable because there's no free lunch, pun intended.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
And
go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, I actually I created a GLP-1 protocol for this
Okay.
reason. Um, and part of the protocol is getting some supplementation that I really recommend people do. Like, I think people should take a fiber supplement. Why? It's especially when you first start and the drug is so strong. And depending on how big you are, there seems to be like a dose dependency. So, like, someone that's really large may need to start at like 5 milligrams. Then, in somebody that was not so large might be able to start at 2.5. Or I've even tried to get people to start lighter than that. It's
Mhm.
lower than that, which is lower than even the vial goes. Um, but if that's the case, the appetite might get so strongly suppressed that then eating fiber just feels like ugh. And then if you do eat your fiber, you don't eat your protein. You're kind of playing this like, which one am I going to get? Because I only have
Mhm.
so much room to fit in my stomach. So I
Right.
recommend people get on like a fiber supplement. I recommend people try to get some like protein powder, like a protein shake or a protein bar or something that's like snackable that you can get in and get like actually Mike Israel came out with the shot, the Genius shot. Like I think that's great for someone that's on GLP-1. So you could just be like, let me get 23 grams of protein down my throat really quick right now while I'm doing this. Making sure that you have a multivitamin, you're having your essential fatty acids, things like that. I think are super important when you're taking.
Yeah. Some things that I've also seen too, when you're dealing with changes to digestive speed, you're also going to have changes to nutrient absorption. So I'm actually really big on supporting gut health during the use of a GLP. So adding things like glutamine to make sure that that gut lining is nice and strong. Even adding in some digestive enzymes or betaine HCl to support stomach acid, so that the protein you are eating is getting digested appropriately. Um, and then I saw the same thing with a lot of my clients. They get to a point where they're not even thinking about food. So the prospect of food, almost like they develop aversions to specific foods. Like one of my clients couldn't eat chicken. She's like, I just cannot eat chicken.
Yeah.
I used to love chicken. Now I don't want to eat it. I'm like, okay, cool. So these are the problems that we have to navigate. The other thing that I found is there are some real side effects with these
Yeah.
drugs, and they tend to be very dose dependent. So one thing that I noticed, like, and just to mention those for the audience who might not be familiar, you're looking at gastroparesis, you're looking at nausea and like very serious nausea that doesn't go away. And then even as deep as pancreatitis, right? So these are some serious side effects. So one of the things that I found to be most beneficial is encouraging my clients to work with their providers to keep them on the lowest dose possible, like you mentioned. And full disclosure to the audience, like when I had clients starting to come to me with these, like using these drugs, I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. I'm going to see what it's like. So I knew I was going to a fat loss phase. We were going to Puerto Rico for New Year's. So I'm like, let's give it a shot. So the clinical dosage for tirzepatide, I believe, starts at 2.5 milligrams. And I personally started at 1. And even at 1 milligram, I noticed a tremendous decrease in appetite, a tremendous decrease in food focus. And I never went above 2 milligrams. And I ended up losing like 25 pounds. And
Well, oh, sorry.
sorry to interrupt. And like all I did throughout the course of that was as soon as I hit a weight loss plateau, I was eating the kind of the same shit every day because I'm a creature of habit. So I just eat the same shit every day. I just decreased my carbohydrate source by 25 grams. So like if I was having 150 grams of rice, I would have 125 grams and then 100 grams. And I didn't change any other thing. I didn't track a single thing. And I don't know if you saw this actually, but maybe since you have a lot more experience with clients doing this, have you noticed that your clients have some decrease, like some significantly decreased inflammation and joint pain?
Yeah, and I think another thing I've seen that's really interesting is my clients are also on testosterone. It
Mm-hmm.
seems to have quite a good effect on their lipid panels. Because
I noticed
sometimes,
that too. Yep.
yeah, like you'll see like their LDL would be generally a bit elevated, HDL a bit down, and then they
Mm-hmm.
get on, they get, obviously part of it is also the fact that they're dieting, and, they might be doing a little bit of cardio if they're on GLP-1s, they're probably trying to lose weight. But I do think the drug has a significant effect on
Yeah,
that. If you are on on other drugs as well, I think that it's really healthy for your lipid panels.
I agree.
Um,
I agree. I saw an improvement in my lipid panel as well. Like mine are never bad, but my HDL came up quite a few points, and I think that was primarily due to the positive changes in insulin sensitivity that I saw. Like I take my fasted blood glucose a couple times a week, and I was routinely in that like 4.3, 4.5 range.
that's right.
Yeah, it's really significant. Uh,
It's funny that you said that about you trying it because
yep.
when I tried to build a protocol, I started working with this guy named Dr. Dean St. Mark. He's
Yeah.
a brilliant guy.
Yeah, he is.
Uh, yeah, and so basically with my protocol, the supplements that we use are Dr. Dean St. Mark supplement needs, who, in my opinion, has the most well designed supplements on the market. I worked with him to build out the protocol and
What's the brand of his supplements? Pimp it out.
supplement needs.
Supplement needs. Okay.
Yeah, and we basically built. He basically was like, I was like, listen, this is what I want to do. This is the things I'm thinking about adding in it. And then he gave me his opinion. He's obviously very, very educated in this. And when we dealt with it, he was asking like, oh, have you ever tried it? And I'm like, oh no, but I've been training clients with. He's like, I think it'd be good for you to get the experience of trying it. And I was like,
For sure.
I'm like, you're right. I mean, you're right. If I'm gonna preach it, I gotta live it a little bit.
Hmm.
I have to at least know what people are dealing with at some level, anecdotally, so I could feel it. Because there's something different than knowing someone tells you, "Hey, I'm feeling nauseous after 3 bites," and it's different when you feel nauseous after 3 bites. There's a different understanding and empathy you can have with your client.
Yep.
So it's a different connection. So I tried it. I basically was like, look, I got to get ripped for this to do like these advertising promotional situations anyhow for the product. So I might as well use this as a thing, and I could be like, look, I'm trying the protocol exactly. I did it. I lost 25 pounds in 7 weeks. I was pretty lean, like I had visible abs, striations in my legs, striations in my shoulders. I don't feel like I lost very much muscle. I don't think I would. I don't know if I would have lost more or less muscle just doing a regular diet, but it's definitely would be almost insignificant the difference from
Yep.
other fat loss plans I had. Except it was 100x easier mentally for me
Oh
because
my God. Yeah. It's a cheat code.
it's a cheat code. Like I'm a fat kid at heart. Like if I'm dieting, I'm dreaming of chocolate cakes, donuts, milkshakes. I'm like dreaming of stuff that makes you want to throw up because it's so much food. And that's like my normal. That's like normal to me. Like It was the first time in my life, Paul, that I ever felt like I'm at a restaurant and I'm not like looking at other people's food when I'm done eating. Normally, I'll finish eating and I'll kind of like by accident, be like, I'll catch myself, be like, I'll look at the person's food and look up, and I'll be like, don't look at their food. It's weird. Like, look straight ahead. But it's like a dog that hasn't finished his food. That just was gone. It didn't happen to me anymore. Like that food drive
Well,
just disappeared.
one of the cool things that I've actually because I dove into the research quite a bit because I get nerdy about this sort of stuff, and learning about how there are GLP-1 receptors in the brain and how GLP-1 drugs are actually being used in the treatment of addictions and different addictive behaviors. I was like, yeah, that makes total sense. So they're actually using it in conjunction with smoking cessation programs and things like that because of how powerful it is in rewiring the brain. Um, and in terms of my experience in general, I mean, I'm a big proponent of walking the walk as a coach. And now that doesn't mean that if your client is taking a prescription, like if your client is taking Lipitor, I'm not going to say, hey, man, I'm going to take Lipitor too, or I'm going to take a beta blocker, or I'm going to, any of these drugs. But when you look at what the drug is for, who it's been studied by, and you have access to it, it's like, it might be worth trying for yourself. In the same way that I don't believe that, if you have no experience with performance enhancing drugs, you probably shouldn't be coaching clients who are on performance enhancing drugs. If you are not familiar with bodybuilding prep protocols, you probably should not be coaching clients who are prepping for bodybuilding shows. You need to be able to walk the walk to put yourself in those clients' shoes. One of the rules that I have about my coaching across the board is if I haven't done it, tried it, um, wouldn't do it, or wouldn't try it, I will never ask you to do it.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome rule, and I think that's something that we very much vibe on because I'm the same way. Like before, I never had done uh, any kind of testosterone or any kind of performance enhancing drugs before because I was a professional athlete as well. It's one, it's illegal.
Right.
Two, it was just something I just never even considered to be honest. And one of my clients was like, "Listen, I want to get on testosterone," and I was like, let's talk with doctors. This isn't my world, you know.
Right.
So
Yep.
we talk with doctors. I was learning. Finally, I dove so deep into it that I would tell him stuff like, "Oh, you're gonna should expect this and this and this and this," from my understanding. And then somebody's like, "Can you jump on it with me?" And I was like, I don't really want to, I said. But what I'll do is I'm happy to go with you and go through the process, do the test, so it feels like we're in it together.
Mm-hmm.
We ended up doing the test. My testosterone was quite low. the doctor theorized the reason is because of the traumatic brain injuries.
Yep, very common.
Yeah, it seemed like that caused me to have low testosterone. It's still I wasn't hypergonadal or anything like that, but I was on the very low end for my age. Um, and my client's like, man, can you jump on with me? And I was like, you know what? I am going to be coaching you on this, and since this is part of an issue, I'll try it with you. Started and did a very low dose of the TRT dose. I was doing like 100 milligrams a week. And I basically stayed there, and I've been doing it partly because of learning through what I see my own lipid panels, see his. I was able to learn and realize things like, oh, certain esters react differently. Oh man, if I change from cypionate to ananthate, like oh, I'm getting like quite a change. Like oh, I wonder what that is. Would that is that the same thing for my client? He be changing? And I was able to look and get more curious than I might have been if I was just doing it for somebody else. Because when it's somebody else, no matter how caring you are, nothing is ever going to encapsulate you and capture your mind as much as what's happening in your own body.
I agree. And I mean, I just want to clarify too, like nothing that we're saying like to do isn't without consulting with our own doctors and having
Of
medical
course.
supervision. I would never advise against taking prescription medication without doctor supervision. So I just definitely want to put that out there.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
the next question I have is you mentioned your you call it like your fat kid tendencies. Um, I'm right there with you, man. Like when I I've told this story on the podcast before, but when I was training for my bodybuilding competition the first time a couple years ago, my coach gave me a free meal to celebrate my wife's. She did her final show of the season, which was the nationals show, and I was like, I want to celebrate with her. He's like, yeah, go have a meal, enjoy yourself. Back on plan the next day. I ate so much that I made myself sick to the point where I didn't sleep at all and I was crying on the stairmaster the next day because I was so sick and nauseous. And my wife had to drive home from Toronto. So my wife had to drive the day after she competed, 5.5
Oh,
hours home.
man.
It was really bad. But like I want to talk about how you work with clients on their relationship with food because I think as someone who has dealt with a disordered relationship with food, we are uniquely qualified to understand the challenges that our clients face, and we can bring a certain level of empathy that maybe somebody else could not.
Yeah,
What are some of the things that you do with your clients when helping them navigate a disordered relationship with food?
I think like the first and most important thing I'm doing with them is I'm not judging them for it. You know, I let them know very frequently and I remind them that where you are, I've been, and where you are, in some sense, I am. I grew up a lot around uh, Alcoholics Anonymous groups and Narcotics Anonymous groups. Some of the people in my family had issues.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot actually from those groups. How to take things one step at a time, how
Mm-hmm.
to be accepting of yourself when you do make the mistake, understanding how to come out of that. That guilt is the what guilt and shame are what's going to drive you down that deep dark hole that's going to be hard to get out of. Like I don't think people I don't think people mess up when they have their explosion and their binge. I think it's what happens after the binge that's the problem.
I
It's you
agree. Yeah.
have the binge, you have the binge. Now I feel like shit about myself. Sorry if I did. I'm not allowed to curse.
No, you're good. You're good. You're good.
I don't feel like shit about myself. I feel like I'm no longer like I'm not who I saw myself as. I'm weak. You start giving yourself all these negative labels, all these negative, shameful feelings. And guess what? Now I feel bad. Now your brain's searching for dopamine, and your drug of choice is going to be to go back to that binge for the second day, and the
Mm-hmm.
third day, and the fourth day. And now the scale's going up. Now you're looking a little worse. Now that's like, I'm giving up, forget about it. I can't do it. And you label yourself as someone that can't do it. And that's where all the damage is done, I think. So I really take an approach of listen, This is not going to be solved today. You are probably going to binge at some point, and this is what we're going to do. These 4 or 5 steps to get out of it. And guess what? If you don't get out of it, don't worry. Tomorrow I'm going to be here with you, and we're going to go through it again. And if you don't get out of it the next day, I will be there the next day again, and we're going to get through it. And I'm still here for you. I'm still walk by your side. Nothing changes, and
Right.
this will be conquered eventually, just one step at a time.
Yeah, I totally agree. Being a supportive partner with them through the process, having that level of empathy and communicating to them that this is all part of a journey. I really resonate with those feelings after the fact of guilt and shame. One of the things that I work on with my clients a lot is mindfulness. So I'm never upset when a client will overindulge or I even binge if they make the decision to eat the food consciously. If they look at the pizza and they say, I'm going to eat that whole pizza, and then they go ahead and do it, I'm like, cool, you made a decision and you
Yeah,
understood what that decision was. Now, since you made that decision, let's have a conversation as to why. What were you doing at that time? How were you feeling about yourself and your situation at that time? Then, while you were eating it, what were you feeling? How were you eating it? Were you sitting in front of a TV? Did you hide away in your bedroom so no one would see you? Did you hide the pizza from your partner? You know, all of these other things. Did you stop eating when you were full or did you just keep going? To me, those are the true questions that will allow the client to introspect. And then after that, it opens up a tremendous dialogue between you two that will both allow you to showcase your vulnerability and your own experiences with that issue, and then allow your client to share with you, and then you can navigate it together. I think that binge restrict cycle that you spoke about is probably the most harmful in that, you know, you binge eat and then you go eat 1,000 calories for 5 days in a row. You build up such a massive debt of hunger that you just go ahead and binge eat again. One of the things that I tell my clients is like, hey, if you average your calories or like over the course of an entire week, you probably just could have eaten 3,000 calories a day and been in the same spot,
yeah.
but you ended up eating 1,000 calories for 6 days and then 12,000 calories on one day.
And another thing I try to tell my clients when I'm working with them is like, look, if you're dieting and you're starting to feel like we've dropped 20 pounds, let's say, we've been doing
Mm-hmm.
this for 8 weeks, and you're like, Tone, I'm just starting, I'm all right. I can still hold on. I'm starting to feel a bit hungrier. A lot of times I'll be like, listen, let's increase your calories just a bit for the next couple weeks. I really try to say, right now that you're getting these feelings, let's avoid the hyper palatable foods. Not that I want you to be able to have ice cream every so often stuff. I'm not telling you not to do that stuff, but just for right now. Right now, while things are kind of edgy, and if you have had a history of it, let's kind of avoid the hyper palatable foods for a couple weeks. But let's increase the portions. Let's make you feel full at the end of every
Yeah.
meal. Let me feel full. Like let's add an extra. Let's add a baked potato to your meal. Another baked potato to your meal. Make it something silly, or a thing of strawberries at the end of your meal, like a big thing of strawberries, and like satisfy that urge before it gets to the point that there's no tomorrow, where it's like I don't care what you say, Shake Shack's calling my name, and it's like a little prayer, and there's nothing you can do about
Shake Shack's calling my name.
it. Yeah. So I think that
Dude.
that's another really important thing that I do with my clients, and I know it because I am that guy. Like I'm
Yep.
as much that guy as they are. If you put me and them in the same in a hotel together, we would both be that guy if he died us for 12 weeks, sneaking out at 6 in the morning looking to go downstairs. And I am, unfortunately, I'm even worse than a lot of my clients because I have two sides of me. I have a kind of a psycho crazy side of me that gets disciplined and like, okay, if you want to suffer, I'll suffer, and then I won't. I don't give a crap if I don't eat for 3 5 days, which I've had to cut 30 pounds in 2 weeks for a fight before.
Right.
So then I can go in the opposite direction and then just binge completely. So yeah, like I understand everything you guys they're going to go through, and I think I'm able to like foresee problems before that happens if they have similar issues.
I love that. I love that. So
By
I
the
think I think that's sorry, go ahead.
you're just your thing's frozen. I just want to let you know. I don't know if that
Oh,
matters.
okay. We're good. Um yeah, so that's a perfect segue. You know, you mentioned cutting 30 pounds in 2 weeks for a fight. That's something that I actually haven't spoken about on the podcast before with anyone. So I think it's worth a discussion, especially in fight sports. Very common to cut weight. For me in powerlifting, I often competed at lower body weights than I walked around at. I think my biggest cut I cut from 247 to 216 in a week um, to compete. And so let's talk a little bit about weight cuts. What was the biggest weight cut you ever did? Was it that 30 pounds in 2 weeks?
Yeah, that was the biggest cut, and I think that was the absolute worst cut. By the way, that was also the cut for my UFC debut. So yeah, it was really fun.
Oh,
Yeah, and I fought a guy with his name was Mirbek Taisumov, and anybody that has their last name with off something, you know something's going on.
oh yeah.
You're gonna
You
have
know
a hard.
he's got cauliflower everywhere on his body, not just his ears.
Yeah, yeah. He was definitely a specimen. But yeah, that weight cut was the absolute worst. And so basically, I'll give you a bit of a story about how that was. So I was in Greece. I just fought in China um, before that, and I really thought it was going to get me in the UFC. I was like, this win is going to get me in the UFC. I got out of the UFC. I called my manager, and he was like, "Yeah, they said maybe another fight," and I just was heartbroken, like completely heartbroken. I had a knee injury. I couldn't believe it. I was, you're dead broke as a fighter, and I was like, I'm just tired of being broke. I'm tired of being a burden to people I love because like Christmas time, I don't have money to get people presents, and just living a really just skating by life as a fighter, and then I'd work as a coach to make a little money, and then I have to travel across the world, and I was just done. So I decided, I just like, man, I'm gonna retire. Screw this. And I went, obviously, because I'm a fat boy at heart. I just started eating, and the actual story. This is kind of funny. The actual story of how I got caught with you. See, I was something I'd never done really before. I was smoking weed for the first time in my life, and
Oh,
I was eating cookies. It was Christmas time. And at some point, I go out, like I smoked weed, and came in. I saw my grandmother, and I'm chilling on the couch eating her cookies, and we're talking. And I get an email. It's like, you want to fight Mirbek Taisumov in the UFC on this day, and I'm kind of like high, so I'm like, I'm like, oh, whatever. Yeah, right. I bet you that's not real. Then it kind of hits me. I'm like, that didn't read what I thought I read, and I look at it, and I'm like, I just answered yes, I'm in without even thinking. I'm like, I wonder how much I weigh. I jump up, I run up the scale, and I think at the time I'm like 87 kilos.
okay.
And I have to fight at, I normally fight at 66 kilos, but now I'm fighting at 70 kilos. That's what the fight got offered me.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my God, I just said yes to the UFC. And I'm not going to be able to make weight. Like, I'm going to miss weight.
Mhm.
And I have no muscle at this point. I've been like not training at all for maybe like 3 months, just atrophy. Like I didn't even get up to like go for like a sit up. I would train people and like, be drinking a sugar milk coffee while I was training them and then go get like I was like, yeah. I would just do jujitsu a bit, but I like have like a class of 30 people, like yeah, do jujitsu and just go home, and I wouldn't even roll with the class. Like I was just depressed. I was, defeated by fighting. I had some family issues. So I basically starved myself for the entire, I don't even want to call it a camp. The entire time I was getting ready, I was eating 850 to 1,000 calories a day. And I was trying to train twice a day, which obviously wasn't working. I wasn't able to sleep. Um, I was eating no carbohydrates. I would do every 2 days, I would do a 24-hour fast. So I wouldn't eat at all for the whole day and train that time. I got to Sweden. I wasn't that bad actually. By the time I got to Sweden, I probably only had like 15 or 17 pounds left to lose of water weight.
Hmm.
But I was so under muscled, and muscle holds a lot of water.
Right.
So if you're a big, you see a guy in the UFC that looks big and jacked, and he's like, "Oh, I cut 20 pounds." For him, that's a lot easier than if you see the chubby guy be like, "I cut 12 pounds."
Dude, I'm glad you said that because that's something that I've said for so long, especially like over the course of my powerlifting career. As I got more muscular, weight cuts got easier and easier and easier because I was so much more heavily muscled.
You're holding on to more water. You're more metabolically healthy, so you're sweating better. Your body's more efficient at using everything it needs, and like you have like that extra fat. It just doesn't. You're not getting rid of the fat. The fat's harder. It's like it's less. It's harder to get the water out of the fat.
Yeah, it holds it much more for sure.
It holds it much more. Also, you're the other thing is when you rehydrate, you're not like, oh, now I'm back to being stronger because it took so much more out of you. The rehydration project basically just makes you look watery and more
Mm.
fat and more
Yeah.
like jiggly. Like you feel like trash after you rehydrate. Well, when
Yeah.
you're muscular, you feel like, oh, and that when you rehydrate, you feel like, oh, I'm Superman now compared to what I was
Oh yeah,
7
big
months
time.
ago. So I was in the bath. At some point, I remember I passed out 2 times during the weight cut, the actual weight cut. It took me 27 hours to make weight, basically full blast cutting the entire time with very little sleep.
So was
Uh,
your preferred method of sweating was bath?
Bath, I did bath later in my career because it was just easier. I realized that the sauna, I'd have to get. I generally didn't sweat a lot. Again, I wasn't very muscular, especially as an MMA fighter. Some fights more than others, but overall, not very muscular. So sweating was always really hard for me. But in the bath, it would come off a lot quicker. So
Yeah,
I'd sweat
because you
some less time.
did you use Epsom salts?
Yeah, we would
So you
use
create
Epsom
that
salt.
gradient? Yeah.
Exactly. In the UFC fight, particularly, it was so hard that I wasn't sweating that I even wore a sauna suit with like the sweet sweat in the bath to make it even hotter. It was so bad that at some point, my cousin who was there was like fuck this, like it's not worth it. Like it's
Yeah.
not worth it. Just tell them you're not gonna make weight and just let's do it. But I knew that I wasn't going to win the fight at that point, to be honest. I was like, I'm not in any state to win a professional mixed martial arts fight against one of the best fighters in the world. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
And if I lose and I don't make weight, I won't get another shot.
Yeah, I mean if you embarrass the company like that and don't make weight, I think that's kind of it. I mean, so my biggest weight cut, like I said, I went from 247 to 217. Um,
Nice.
I did that in 7 days. Uh, so, but I was able to use diuretics, number one. So I had access to that. Um, I basically cut my carbs 7 days out, did a water load. I did a gut cleanse 36 hours out. So I took a whole bunch of mag citrate, had a lot of diarrhea, which is never a good time.
That's not fun.
Used a diuretic. I think I used Bumex, so like a very aggressive diuretic. Um, but I had a 24-hour weigh-in, and I was still relatively muscular. That was actually the meet where I squatted my first 800 pounds.
Wow.
But I had access. I had access to the diuretic, and I also had access to IV afterwards. So when we're talking about like differences in sports, you're not allowed to use IVs. You're not
No.
allowed to use diuretics. So it's going to be much harder. Um, I think weight cuts is something that I never recommend it to beginners, especially like beginner powerlifters. But I mean, I was competing against some of the best people in the world. You were competing in the UFC. You got to play every card that you have. You know what I mean? Um, when you went into coaching fighters, what was your preferred strategy for the weight cut? Like if you could write just a blanket plan of attack for a fighter who needed to cut weight, how far out would you start? Would you use any sort of electrolyte manipulation? What was your go-to strategy?
So I nowadays what I did afterwards for my fighters, I had one more fight after that. But what I did after with my other fighters is I would first things first. The first thing is you can't let yourself get above a striking set. You got to put a point that's like this is my number. You know, my let's say I'm fighting 155. I don't not going over 175.
Right.
That's I think a general rule. And to be honest, I don't even care if it's muscle or fat. Like I don't want you to go past that point. Like it just
Hmm.
because you don't have control over when you're going to fight completely. It's not as if there's a UFC then, and I'm going to get on that card. You might get called last minute or close to the last minute, and you don't always have the opportunity to say no in
Right.
this game. So you got to stay in your striking point. As far as how I do the water manipulation now, there's two things. There's two variables. One, the water loading. I'm much more specific about it now, and the sodium manipulation, as well as the diet. One thing I didn't do back in the day that I did with fighters now is I cut back on their fiber on the
Yeah, big
last
time.
few days of the fight because fiber retains water and holds it in. It also stays in your gut for a long time,
Yep.
and that's extra weight. And like I do stuff like I cut the carbohydrates out, and if they have like a training session that week, that's one of their last intents. I'm very like specific. Like here is like I would rather you have a Rice Krispie treat right before you go do your last sparring when you're on depleted from carbohydrates, like 45 minutes before, than have like a bowl of pasta because the bowl of pasta is just going to take a lot longer to digest.
Hmm.
It's going to be staying in your stomach more. There's going to be a bunch of other things attached with the pasta. It's probably going to have some sauce on it, there might have some salt in it, so on and so forth. I was much more specific with it that, hey, listen, we can't have heavy fiber meals
Right.
before the fight. Everything was planned out much more like lower fiber. We're going to do water load for 2, 3 days, and we're going to cut the water down slowly. But one thing I made a big mistake back in the day, I would cut the water like I would cut back 3 days, 2 days before the weigh-ins. I was already cutting back the water quite significantly.
Ooh, yeah.
Now I have my guys basically water loading up till the night before, the day before the weigh-ins is the first time they drop the water. They don't even drop it completely. They just drop the amount of water they're drinking. So
Right.
let's say I'm doing like 10 liters, 10 liters, 8 liters, and then it's like the day before weigh-in day, it's like 3 liters or 2.5 to 3 liters, and then they're starting their cut. So they're actually the first few hours of the cut the night before is like with a workout cut. That's what I normally have them do. Is like a workout cut. There's no added salt. We do have some electrolytes in there. We let this food be salted naturally. So if you're getting something that has a little bit of salt, I'm not telling you to wash it up and be plain because we don't want to cause any kind of electrolyte imbalance. But I don't add any extra salt on it. They're not going to have like electrolyte drinks for there. I'm
Hmm.
gonna let you have your training that day. Cut the water down. You'll probably drop just from that whole process, like 5 to 10 pounds during that little
Hmm.
week thing. And then the next day, in the morning, I also give them food at nighttime. So like it'll be like a boiled egg, and it'll be a boiled egg and a couple pieces of cucumber, like really something small, but something in their stomach and a couple sips of water that will normally help them sleep. Because I figure if you sleep at all, you're probably going to lose like 2 pounds, two to
Yep.
three. If you don't sleep, if you're up the whole night, that's it. You're not going to lose anything, no matter how
Yep.
uncomfortable you make it.
Yep.
And then you have to lose that in the bath. And I want to spend as little time in that bath, as little time in that complete dehydrated state as humanly possible.
Yeah. You really just want to be on weight when you step on the scale. That's all you give a shit about.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I
I
have
want
a
that last second to be on weight.
Yeah, I have a very similar strategy. I mean, I'll usually start the water load about 5 to 7 days out. I don't get as aggressive 10 liters. I'll go up to 8 usually, unless the person is huge.
Yeah.
Um, I'll go up to about 8 liters, and then I'll keep that high until about 24 hours out, and then I drop it down to like sipping with meals. I also
Mhm.
do a fiber cut probably 2 days out. Um, I also standardize sodium. So like I'll have the person start measuring how much sodium they're using in their meals about 2 weeks out, and we just keep that the same. And then that last 24 hours, the last piece is cutting carbohydrates, because carbohydrates will have you retain water. But one thing I do is I'll have them swap the calories from carbohydrates to fats so that their total calories actually don't drop. Because what we've seen in the research is that if your total calories remain the same, performance declines tend to be much less. So
Mhm.
I will keep their calories up, because the goal isn't to drop fat, it's to drop water. Um, and then that last 24 hours, I'll have them eat most of their calories first thing in the morning, and then fast beyond that. And during that fast, we're typically not drinking water, not eating food. They're still moving. And then based on how their body weight is that day, I know that, okay, you typically lose 3 pounds overnight while you sleep. I'm going to put you to bed 3 pounds overweight so that when you wake up, you'll be on weight. And then if there is a little bit left over and their weigh in is at 9 a.m., I'll just have them wake up really early and hit the sauna. Um, Sauna or the bath. I personally prefer the sauna. It's a little bit faster. I find the bath just really I never loved the bath. I thought it was really uncomfortable. Um, I'd much rather just get in, suck, and then get out. Um, and then that rehydration process, it the process doesn't stop when you make weight. The
No.
process is really only getting started, because weighing in is the easy part. Putting the weight back on the places that it needs to be, that's going to be the hard part. Did you have any like tips during that rehydration recomposition phase
Ye-
that you could share?
Yeah. So I think a big mistake a lot of people make is they eat too early.
Yeah, I agree.
They're starving, and like I made this mistake 100 times over. So, but they eat too early and they're not getting enough liquid in, and then you feel once you've eaten that you're good, but you're probably slightly dehydrated. So what I have them do is first thing we have like an electrolyte drink right after the weigh-ins, and we're sipping on that for a while. Again, I try to protect their GI health because the last thing you need is for your stomach to get like suspended large. Now your stomach has pain. Now you don't know when you're hungry, when you're not. It's hard to like really calculate how much you should be eating.
Right.
Your signal cues are all messed up. So I'll drink an electrolyte, and then I'll start having them drink about a liter every hour and a half, and probably 2 hours, 2.5 hours after they've had a liter, 2 liters, 3 liters, they have their first small meal. And the first meal, again, it's like very rich carbohydrates with like a drink, normally like a version of a Gatorade type drink with it. So they eat and drink at the same time. They have something small, easily digestible, leave it. Again, another hour, getting another liter in, depending on how much weight they cut. And then their next big meal, that's when they have their big meal. I think that's the biggest mistake that people make, and how much fats they add in their
Yeah.
post weigh in meal. Like people sometimes like, I'm gonna go out and eat. It's like, no, 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 no. Like this isn't the time to go eat barbecue ribs. Save that for after the fight because you're going to get in there. It's a whole bunch of fat. Your stomach's not ready to digest it. It's been through a ton of stress.
Hmm.
You should give it foods it already understands, it already knows, it's been digesting for the entire training camp. And just give more of those foods and make the fats a little bit less, increase the carbohydrates. And I even keep the protein moderate. I don't like hyperload on the protein because that's not the goal right now.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I actually keep protein super low. I cut it about, so if they're typically eating, let's say 200 grams of protein, their recomp, they're eating about 100 grams of protein, because it's like we don't need it. Our goal isn't to put on muscle; it's to put on that water and get that glycogen store back up. So I'm using a lot of really high glycemic foods. I also really love the strategy of I'll put a gallon of water with 50 to 100 grams of carbohydrates, some additional creatine and salt, and I'll have them sip that gallon of water throughout the day on top of the additional water that they're getting in. I also do the same thing as you. That first meal is relatively small, and then we're eating every hour, hour and a half after that, never getting full, focusing on, high glycemic, low volume carbohydrate sources and hammering sodium. I think people forget the power of sodium, um, and how much you actually need to replenish those carbohydrates. I forget what the ratio is off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure for per liter of water, you need about 2 to 3 grams of sodium, or sorry, of salt. And then for every 100 grams of carbohydrates, you need additional salt for the uptake, because sodium is a carrier for carbohydrates into the muscle and in the formation of glycogen. Um, so that's another strategy that I use as well. Yeah, it's I find this so fascinating that, like, whether you're talking powerlifting or fighting, the goal is performance, right? The goal is to be at your best when it comes to fight. And in the situation that you were in, you knew, you're like, I'm fucked. Like, I might have weighed in, but I'm fighting this guy with one arm behind my back. And if you're going to go fight another human being or load a PR on your back, you don't want to have any doubts in your mind that you just fucked yourself.
I think even like it's funny. After that fight, so basically I did like that fight, and then I kind of was like, I'm done. I kind of really put myself. I really look back after that fight. I fought one more time. I was mentally distraught. I lost again, and I was just brutalized online. Mentally, I took a big hit, and to be honest, it was the biggest growth period in my life because I. It was the first time I looked back and said, "Okay, you pointed a lot of fingers in this situation that things didn't go your way." But the place that you haven't pointed enough fingers might be the ultimate place that you should have pointed the fingers. So that was right
Absolutely.
back on myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's your dream. It was what you wanted, and you made a lot of mistakes. And you can't control what everybody else does. And it really made me change how I look at the world, how I decide what I'm doing on my everyday life. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm done with this. I need to. How am I going to fight? Am I going to go back to fight? I have 4 herniated discs. I was really injured, a bunch of stuff. I was like, if I go back into it, I'm not going to be the best version of me because I just the mistakes have caught up with me. My mistakes
Right.
have caught up with me. So I'm going to retire and I'm going to try to become a coach and I'm going to try to do something in this world. That's why I started doing that. But I actually came back for one last fight. So I was training people. I ended up getting into bodybuilding and lifting weights, recreationally, because I was learning about it and trying to become a better coach. Especially since a lot of people just wanted to get fit, and actually what they wanted was beach bodies. So I was training a lot of people for that in the end. Uh, and I started like, man, I feel kind of strong. Like, man, I couldn't bend, I couldn't shoot a takedown for 2 years because my knees were so bad after the surgeries. But I started squatting and slowly progressing, and now I can shoot takedowns again. Like, that's amazing. And I was like, I feel good. And I'm like, I might do one more. So I did one more fight. I fought at 145 pounds. And I can tell you, Paul, it was the easiest weight cut I've ever done in my life. I
Yeah,
was
no doubt.
lean. I had a six pack going into the fight. I had a coffee on the way to the weigh-ins, Freddo Espresso. It's a Greek espresso that's shaken. It's delicious, and I had that going into the weigh-in with sugar in it. So I literally was at the weigh-in, sparky, like jumping around, having a conversation. I cut 12 pounds, 13 pounds to make 145
Mhm.
of water, and it was no effect just because I had done the right things from beforehand. But
Yeah.
I realized after the fight, it's still a little too little, too late. I got a brain scan and found out that the injuries were much more severe than I thought, and luckily I stopped competing after that.
So you mentioned on a number of occasions the uh, we'll call it the trials or the adversity that you faced as a fighter. What's perhaps the most important lesson that you learned from fighting that you now apply as a coach?
I think the I think it's not even. I think it's something that would go from everything. But I think I personally learned this from fighting. Is you don't always get out what you put in. You don't always. It's not always the case.
Right.
But you definitely, if you don't put in, you won't get out.
Yeah.
And I think that that's like the biggest lesson in like kind of absorbing that reality of like,
Mm.
yeah, I might do everything right. Like I know with my business now, I might send the DMs like I'm supposed to. I might follow all the right protocols. I might try to give the best service, and I still might fail. But
Mm.
100% I will fail if I don't do those things.
Yeah.
And I think that acceptance is the most important thing I learned from fighting because it kind of separated me from the outcome and made me focus on what's the process that I need to go through, regardless of the outcome. Because the outcome is not guaranteed unless I don't do the process, and it's guaranteed in a negative way.
Yeah. I like that because I mean, you truly can do everything right. Like I look at my last powerlifting competition where I tore my quads. Like I did everything right leading into that competition, and guess what? Pop, pop, down goes Paul. And you know what? I didn't give a shit. I didn't give a shit because I did everything right, and it made it a lot easier of a pill to swallow. And the same process that I went through to get myself to a position to be one of the best in the world, I went through it to be one of the best at rehab. And then I'm doing it to be the best a coach I can be for the people that I coach. And that process is what keeps me grounded. That's what gets me excited. And I think the sooner you learn that, the better off you're going to be. And I think guys like you and I were a bit stubborn. It takes us a little longer to learn it than others. But yeah, that really resonates. Um, the last question I have for you is if you had a billboard on the side of the highway for everyone to read, what would it say?
You would say you can fail at what you don't want to do, so you might as well try to do what you love.
I fucking love that.
It's my favorite saying.
Yeah, it's probably the best way we can end the podcast. If there was one person that you would like to see me interview on the podcast, who would it be? But the caveat is that you have to help me get them on.
Yeah, I would love to hear you speak with Steve Hall. He is the host of the Revive Stronger podcast. He's
Hmm.
an excellent guy. I've had him on the podcast twice, and I'm gonna remake the connection with you guys right away.
Yeah, I reached out to him a while ago, but he was on vacation and I forgot to reach out. So I'll definitely hook you. I'll definitely reach out to you to make that intro again for sure.
All right, sounds good. Sounds
Dude,
good, Paul. Thank
Tony,
you so.
thank you so much for your patience with all this and the technical difficulties and stuff coming on and chatting again. This was like a completely different podcast than the first one. So, I mean, if you're up for it, I'd love to have you on again sometime in the future too.
I would love to, Paul. Anytime you tell me, I'm here.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, share, subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and we'll catch you on the next one.